Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Fellowship of the Binge. I'm Prerna, and with me today is someone I have been watching TV and movies with for the last 12 years. My permanent roommate, my husband, Rajeesh. Yay!
Hello. 12 years, huh? Been a while.
Yeah, we have influenced each other greatly in what we watch, I think, over time. But since this your first time on the show, let's talk a little bit about where our content choices intersect and where we diverge, because we do watch a lot of things together but we also don't. So where do you think we are most alike, and where do we differ the most in the things that we consume?
I think we are fairly, I mean, there's possibly a 70% overlap where the regular pop culture trope or generally what is going around, I think there's a predetermined common taste and preference to it. So whether it is your Game of Thrones of the words, mostly anything mainstream pop culture which is good. I mean, that's where the overlap is. And I think I would be right when I say that I'm the one who introduced you to Korean drama. So that is
Yes,
that is
that is
so I
true,
will
but
take
I introduced you to
credit for that.
Thrones, so I take credit for that.
Fair enough. And I think where we would slightly differ is something like a Gangs of London, right? Something like a Gangs of London would be
Yeah.
something that would be up my alley and not necessarily yours.
Yeah. So
All the
like
Netflix Christmas specials are not my
Gritty,
thing; they are
and
yours.
I watch a lot of them. I watch them with a certain set of people who may or
Yeah,
may
I'm
not
not one of
later be
them.
on this
So
podcast. But
yeah,
no, but
so
you're not one of them. You don't watch a lot of reality TV with me
yeah,
either.
and I think
So
I'm not a period drama person per se.
yeah,
With maybe like a Shogun is a rare thing, or a kingdom is a rare
exception.
entity or exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, so something like a Bridgerton would not fascinate me at all. Something
No.
like a
Bridgerton is
Downton
not really
Abbey,
for you. But yeah, I
yeah,
don't think so.
like a something like a Downton Abbey also probably is
No.
something
But to
that
be
I
fair,
would
Downton
probably
Abbey is
skip.
not for me either. Yeah. So
So yeah, I think there would be like a 15-20% difference. I think, but largely there's overlap.
that's true. Yeah. But I think the one thing that we both love to watch is like gritty mystery shows, or
Hmm.
just case of the week stuff. I love we love a good detective. I think Sherlock was one of our initial bonding shows, I would say. Like the Benedict Cumberbatch with his long coats going around solving cases is absolutely our jam, which is why I thought this might be the perfect opportunity to bring you on the podcast, because there are two great mystery shows that have just been released and I thought we could talk about them together. Today we're going to talk about Department Q on Netflix and Kerala Crime Files on Geo Hotstar. We'll first give our take on Department Q. We'll talk spoiler free for a little bit, and then we'll go straight into spoilers, kind of have a freewheeling discussion about everything that worked for us and what didn't work, if anything. And then we'll do the same for Kerala Crime Files. I think they're two shows that are very different from each other, but also have strange intersections in some ways, and we can get into that as we go. So let's get right into it, I think. So, I mean, we watched Department Q in a week, maybe less. And
More
that also, I
actually,
think
because we
because we,
saw the first few episodes and then you went away.
oh,
And of course, the cardinal rule is that we have to see the episodes together.
yes.
So yeah, so I mean,
Yeah. You
and
did ask me if I would watch it on a plane, but
yeah, that says a lot because if I've said that let's we can I can watch the show and you can watch it at your end, and then
yeah,
when we meet we'll discuss, or maybe there's an episode or a finale left by then. So if I've asked that question, that means the show has got me hooked. So
yeah.
and honestly, with Department Q, I didn't expect to get hooked.
Oh,
It
really?
was,
You didn't?
yeah, I genuinely thought that it would be a maybe a lighter Broadchurch, or something which has a case or a mystery beyond it, but it's very, maybe, the regular very pulpy tropes, and at some
Right.
point I'll get maybe bored, and when it'll be one of those shows that you watch while you're scrolling on your phone at the same time, so you're listening to the dialogue,
Really?
and sometimes you just like look up, and and this usually happens with 10 episode, 12 episode shows, where episode, let's say 7, 8, 9, there's a bit of fatigue, because it's not managed to keep you, on the edge of things,
Hooked.
and it's not
Yeah.
gripping enough. So there is a certain fatigue, and the moment if you realize that, if you're checking your phone or you're doing other things while the show is on.
Yeah.
So, and Department Q is, it's ironic. I've just said that. And at the same time, I would say that Department Q, there are phases where it's kind of like a slow burn, but very, very, it doesn't happen throughout the show. It happens like every now
Yeah.
and then. But it is definitely a show that keeps you hooked. It's definitely a show
Yeah.
that keeps you, gripped, and not just with the mystery, but the overall packaging of it, the characters, the layers of it, the chemistry between them. So yeah, so I mean, I didn't expect to get hooked, to this show, but because I thought, like, everyone knows the drill: gruff detective, tragic backstory, dim
That's
lighting,
true. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and the tropes. But
Somebody who
I was
thinks they are smarter than everyone. We just talked about Sherlock, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And by episode 2, I was emotionally invested in people who barely say 10 words per scene. And
yeah,
that's a testimony to how good the characters were.
says a lot about the show. That's true. I actually got into it a little bit late. I mean, it had come on
Hmm.
Netflix for a bit, and we usually on point where it comes to new shows that are buzzy. But I think we got into it. We were finishing other things, and we got into it slightly late. I did think that there was. Because of the buzz, I thought that it would be good. I went into it expecting a more grim show than it was. I'm not saying it's not grim. It is grim. It does deal with, heavy themes. Like there is PTSD, there's anxiety. There's obviously the central mystery, which is not exactly a picnic for anyone, least of
Hmm.
all the victim. That is
Yeah.
kind of horrifying to watch a little bit. But it is not, it kind of, because the characters are well written, it sweeps you into its world and keeps you there, and you want to hang out with them a little more. You want to
Hmm.
be you want to kind of bask in their chemistry. I think, and eventually it does become like a slightly warmer show than it starts off with. There is a softening of characters, which obviously you would expect in a show like this. And yeah, and I really liked it as well. I enjoyed myself through and through the journey. I didn't think it was very slow.
Hmm.
We did binge it to whatever extent that we could. They're longish episodes,
Yeah.
but it kept us hooked, and it
Yeah.
was good. And I could hang out with this team for another,
Hmm.
I don't know how many seasons, a lot of seasons.
Yeah.
So I haven't read the original books. They have changed quite a bit from the books
Yeah.
apparently. So,
They
but yeah,
are
but I loved it.
Mhm. They are actually based on a series of Danish
Yeah.
novels by
Yeah.
Jussi Adler Olsen. I hope I got the
Yeah.
name right.
Yeah.
So the Netflix version reimagines the story in Scotland.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, the mood, the mist, and the simmering tension of it is fairly common from whatever I've gathered about the books.
Apparently, they were going to probably base it in like a city like Boston or something, where there
Hmm.
is a ferry that could be used. But I think they changed their mind at the end, and I'm glad they did, because the
Yeah,
setting
same.
does, I love the British Scottish setting in general. I think with like cozy
Yeah,
crime shows that we like,
yeah.
I think it works.
And what I liked about it, I mean, what makes this show special is that it did something that Korean dramas typically do very well, and that is the layering of the depth of the characters that they have.
Hmm.
And beyond the
Right.
main characters, you
Yeah.
have the support characters, or the other 5 or 6 characters around the main characters, who in Korean dramas are very well written. And there
Yeah.
are shows where you're rooting more for them than the two main characters, because you know that the
Yeah.
main characters will do their thing, and it's maybe expected, or there's a slight bit of cliche to it, but
Yeah.
it does the same thing really, really well. So if For me, what I remember the most, or what has remained with me most, I mean, after watching the entire show, are the characters
Yeah,
and
definitely.
that entire team and pretty much everyone
Yeah.
around. Because I mean, let's start with Karl,
Yeah, wait,
right? The lead detective.
let's get into, now we're just going to move into spoilers because, it's hard to
Hmm.
talk about these things without spoiling them. So we want everything from here on. Go and catch the show. It's great. We recommend it. It's if you like slow horses or you like, a good mystery show with interesting detectives and characters and kind of running down the clues, this is a show that you should check out. So
Actually,
now we're heading into
Slow Horses is a fairly good reference point,
form.
because it's like Slow Horses but a bit more peppy. And again, I'm saying peppy purely because
Yeah.
of how the supporting actors are and their
Slow
chemistry is.
horses
It's
is
just
pretty
got a bit
peppy.
more.
I feel like slow horses is
It
more
is.
peppy.
It is. Yeah, I think you have to see it to kind of understand the
You have to
nuance,
see it.
the difference between
Yeah.
what the slow horses would look like, or
Yeah.
versus a Department Q. Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Wait,
this
let's move
show,
into
the
spoilers and then we can discuss this in greater detail. So, spoiler alert for everything that happens from here on, and catch us back for Kerala Crime Files. I'd put the timestamp below.
yeah. So essentially, this show isn't about solving crimes. Like if somebody had asked me a summary of it,
Yeah.
so it's about healing from them, because there are different events that happen throughout the
Mm-hmm.
show through different characters, and apart from the the victim who's the case which is being investigated.
Merit.
So it's about guilt, it's about grief, and what it means to start over when you're still bleeding on the inside. Because when you watch the show, you will see a lot of characters
Yeah.
who are just recovering from something devastating that has
Yeah, I
happened
mean,
to them or
basically, our
people around
lead
them.
detective is doing that. He's just been
Yeah,
shot in the neck, and he has deep PTSD from it. He's not liked by people around him anyway. He just thinks he's too good for everybody else. The only
yeah,
person he liked, his partner. He blames himself for his injury, which has put
yeah,
him in a hospital without,
mm,
with paralysis from the waist down. So there is a it starts from a grim place and it
mm,
takes some time to kind of recover from there, from for himself and for the people around him also, who are
yeah.
affected by this but don't know how to talk to
Mm,
him because he's impossible
yeah.
to talk to.
While we both have said that and covered that, I don't want it to sound like this very rone dhone wala sad
No.
dark bleak show, because there's excellent dry humor, there's petty office
Yeah.
politics, and
Yeah.
then more than a few moments where you just pause and it hits you in a good way, or like a jolt.
Yeah,
And that's life, right? So it feels very real. And
it
so if
does. In fact, like, sorry, go ahead.
So if you're looking for a show that's smarter than it needs to be and sadder than it wants to admit, I think Department Q is your next obsession.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to sort of, find the right lines to actually describe it, because it is just that damn good.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's get into why it works, right?
Hmm.
Like the characters work, and I don't know if the central mystery works as well, but we'll get into that. But first, let's talk about what works, which is obviously the lead detective, Matthew Good has played him as like this handsome, gruff guy wearing his sweaters and his jeans all over the place, being rude to people. But he's offset by one of what I think is the best written character on television this year. One of the best, easily. Like Akram as his sidekick,
Yeah.
with a mysterious past and absolute, deadpan badassery
Yeah.
is incredible. And I would take a bullet for him too. So
Yeah.
I mean, that character just works, and
Yeah.
that his presence in the show is so important because I feel like if you take Akram out of the show, it would be a much poorer show for it because a lot of it works because of their chemistry, the two of them sitting in a car talking to each other, like him giving Carl looks,
Mhm.
and trying to keep him away from punching people or doing something reckless as usual,
Yeah.
and his sarcastic deadpan one liners and his incredible moves when he needs to deploy them, his like the final knife thing was just is brilliant. I have seen that more than once. So I mean Akram is amazing, and I can't wait for season 2 to spend more time with him and to figure out what exactly he did in Syria.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
they'll never answer
oh,
it, and I'm happy for them
they
to
will
not
probably
answer
never
it.
answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
and look, the team of Department Q is and I said team because while
Yeah.
Mork might be the main character with the main dish, it is the
Yeah.
whole buffet that makes the show binge worthy.
Absolutely.
Karl Mork, I mean the main character, he's the reluctant lead detective, and the man looks like he hasn't slept since 2003, and drinks coffee like it's therapy, and communicates almost entirely in sighs and sarcasm.
Which
Um,
is a cliche, right? But I don't know, it
yeah,
just
but
works.
yeah, because while there's a lot of the regular trope of a very disgruntled cop, which you would find Gary Oldman in Slow Horses as well,
Yeah.
but it is broken in a very watchable way. Like he's
Yeah.
not the kind of hero who would run into gunfire. Well, technically he did. He does take a bullet at the end of it. By the end of it, but or delivers inspirational speeches. If you're looking for inspirational speeches, this is not the character.
This is
But
not the man.
he's more the type of character to question your life choices with a single side eye, and
Yeah.
somehow it works.
It works.
And
But he also softly kind of mentors his team. He mentors Akram, he mentors Rose, without actually trying to mentor them, but he kind of teaches
Hmm.
them the ropes and then sarcastically says,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, wasn't I supposed to mentor them?" to his,
Yeah,
erstwhile partner. But,
yeah.
that just, I think
He
that
he's
that
like
thread
he's
is
like that
brilliant.
college professor who's very sarcastic to you, and you just hate their wits, and but there are like these subtle teachable moments within those. So that's
Yeah,
what who he reminds me of. But you mentioned Akram, and yes, Akram is easily the quiet MVP of the show.
absolutely.
He is the soul of the show because
Yeah,
he walks into these cold cases like the puzzles he's already solved in his head or already experienced back home in
yeah,
Syria. And he's calm, he's deeply competent, and from what we were guessing it when we were watching it, that he probably is like a special forces soldier or some super soldier of some sorts.
yeah.
He operates on a level of empathy that makes you want to be a better person, or at least go to therapy. And
That's true. Oh my God.
he's also a huge contrast to Mork, and
Yeah,
where Carl broods, Akram balances, and he doesn't need the spotlight. He is the spotlight when things get tough. So
yeah.
so yeah, I think Akram hands down was my favorite character in the show, and I think in a couple of years or towards the end of the years, if when somebody does a list of the most memorable characters, I'm sure Akram makes that list.
Yeah,
And the
he's
other
become a
person that
fan
I
favorite.
yeah, yeah. And let's take a minute to appreciate the real MVP of mental health. That's Mock's therapist. I mean,
Oh
yeah,
boy,
she was incredible.
that is a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I would treat therapy quite that way. From both ends, I think she's forced to treat it the way that she is because of the character that he is. But their chemistry is off the charts. I mean, you have to obviously like not think too much about whether this is kosher when it comes to therapy or not, because they cross a lot of lines.
Yeah.
But I think
And
I
but
think they wanted a little bit of a romantic interest for him,
yeah, I
and
mean,
they added her.
like if you think about it, between Karl Mork and Dr. Rachel, who's played by Kelly MacDonald,
Kelly McDonald.
who's
Yeah.
Mork's therapist, there's nothing that actually happens per se, but they have cracking chemistry.
Mm. Yeah.
And there are things that Mork does which are true to his character, but not so much from her end. But it's like there is chemistry, and I think the best bit of chemistry that I've seen in the last 18 months from shows across the board was from Nobody Wants This, the chemistry between Kristen Bell and Adam Brody. And I think
Yeah.
this is number two for me. I wouldn't put it at number one because, like I said, nothing's happened yet. So when
Yeah.
something does happen, I'm hoping there's a season two. Then
Yeah.
we can sort of measure it against nobody wants this with. She's, like I said, she's the real MVP of mental health. And she doesn't flinch. She doesn't
No.
sugarcoat. She doesn't even raise her voice. She just sits there and quietly demolishes Mort's emotional walls with sentences like, "Why are you angry at yourself for surviving?" And it's very blunt, and
Yeah.
you'll be sitting with there with popcorn, and suddenly you're questioning your own unresolved trauma. So in a very funny way, you're like, fair question. And
Yeah.
if there was a spin-off where she just solves international conflicts using only post-its and facial expressions, I will sign up for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think another person that I want to talk about is the victim here, Merit. It's interesting when a person who's kind of, she's not gray, I would say, but she's not a very likable character, which is great.
She's
I
not.
mean, they always have women playing either like victim characters or
Yeah.
like, but she is not she's not a victim in her head. She's a victim of circumstance, obviously, of what somebody has done to her, but she takes no prisoners. She is quite badass, but she's also not a very likable person. And it's interesting to put that person right at the middle of
Yeah.
your the central mystery,
Yeah.
not just a mystery but also like a search for her, essentially. So she's missing and they have to look for her. As an audience, you're rooting for them to find her. But
Hmm.
you also, when you delve into her life, you're just like, do I like this person? But of course you have to
Yeah.
wrestle with the fact that she is suffering, and she has been suffering for 4 years in this
Yeah.
horrible place that she's been put in. So I like that choice. I like the choice to
Yeah.
make her an unlikable character. I like the choice, and she remains that way, so I did enjoy that bit
Hmm.
as well, now
Yeah.
that I
I,
sat with it
I
for a bit.
if anyone's seen Happy Valley, in the first season there is a character who gets kidnapped, and you are tense for her. There's a point where she manages to just escape, and you're
Right.
worried that she's the guy who's abducted her will find her, and the escape won't happen. And it's very edge of the seat, and you almost sort of breathe a sigh of relief when she gets rescued, because the person has been through enough and so on. And it's a very, like, whew, of a moment with like you said, the character is not very likable. And of course, from a
Yeah.
victim perspective, you don't want that to happen to anyone. But I think what having a character who's the victim, who's not very likable, does is that it puts focus more so on the investigation, on the mystery
Yeah.
of it, and on the people who are investigating it.
Yeah. That's a
And
fair point,
it
actually.
sort
Yeah.
of puts that spotlight, but at the same time, once that spotlight is there, it has to be executed really well. And I think this
Yeah.
show does a fabulous job of doing that as well on that front. And why this show just works. And we are, and if somebody said, so what is it about Department Q that hits different? So, and that why are we emotionally stable-ish adults binge watching a show where half the characters communicate via sighs and haunted stares? It's because, like I said at the beginning, it's not just about the crime, it's about the weight of it. And
Yeah.
most shows ask, who done it, right? It's a who done it kind of a scenario. But Department Q asks, what did it do to them? Or what will it
Yeah.
do to them?
Because the whodunit, to be honest, like, I'm not sure if it works as well as it should. It just kind of,
Hmm.
it's fine. I mean, it's there, but it won't shock you in some ways. A lot of the
Yeah, I
times you
mean,
are ahead of the team, right? You are ahead
correct, because it,
of
it was more
things.
of there has to be a perpetrator, so there was the perpetrator.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
about the entire arc of it.
Yeah, like we guessed this Lyle thing. We guessed, the only thing that I think took me aback was the Sam Hague switcheroo. But
Yeah.
I
Even
think
that,
we
I think
guessed who
we.
the woman was and
Yeah.
all of
Hmm.
that. So I mean, it's not really the point, I guess. I think if you're looking for, a mystery with a twist at the end or whatever, this is not exactly. It tries to be, but I think it's less successful than it should have been. But having said that, it doesn't
But
really take away
yeah, but
from
I
the
don't
time
think
you've
that they were
spent with
even.
it.
Yeah, because I don't think they were even
Yeah.
trying to do that. Because you feel the impact of the case. And not in a melodramatic slow motion, cue the violence kind of a way, but in the silence after.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
Carl's face when, or his expressions when he doesn't say anything, or in Akram's
Yeah.
quiet concern, right?
Yeah.
In the therapist's loaded glances. So these aren't just cases; they are like traumas both solved and unresolved, right?
Yeah.
And Karl Mock is a deeply flawed character, and that's the whole point of the show. Like,
Yeah.
he isn't your usual TV detective. He's not quirky like Sherlock. He's not uh, charming like a Pirot. He's tired. He's closed off, occasionally unlikable as well.
Yeah.
And Carl doesn't need you to like him. That's the whole point of it.
No.
What he needs is time and
He does
maybe
not.
some
He
sunlight
doesn't need his team to like him.
and
He
some
doesn't need the
yeah.
audience to like him. He's fine. But
Yeah.
is he? But I think he's actually fine by the end of the show because of his
Yeah,
team,
and
and
that's what
that
the
is
show
great.
is, like a
Yeah.
slow, painful, honest journey out of the emotional cave that he's in. And
Yeah.
it's
His
oddly
relationship
healing
with
to
his
watch.
son. Yeah.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
stepson, who is
Stepson.
not exactly his stepson. You know, his stepson. Yeah. That
And
that is also very healing.
like I said, I mean, I've always been a sucker for like a good buddy cop, like a good buddy cop watch, like, right?
Yes.
But there is no buddy cop banter here. It's a more opposites attract montage, and what we get is actually mutual growth in very different ways. So Carl
Yeah.
learns to trust someone again. Akram learns to push back. They build a rhythm that's rooted in respect and not cliches, and very
Yeah.
unsaid cliches. Like, they could still go at it insulting each, like proper insulting each other, but by the end of it
Yeah.
you know that it's laced with respect,
Yeah.
and you'll find yourself loving their scenes, especially not because they're loud but because they're very earned.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think speaking of great ensembles is a good segue into Kerala Crime Files, which is now on season 2 on Geo Hotstar. Let's talk about that a little bit in a spoiler free way. The first season came out in 23, and this is the new installment. 6 episodes, just about 30 minutes each, absolutely tight. So let's talk a little bit about how we felt about this show, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about how different it was from Department Q, but also within its own space, what worked and what didn't work. So did you enjoy this season more than the first one? What did you think?
I loved it, and I think it's very difficult to compare the first and the second season because I think
Right.
both seasons are very different. Season
Yeah, I
one took a
agree.
very linear approach in its storytelling,
Yeah.
whereas season two wasn't like that. Season one was a sort of whodunit sort of a thing, and for those of you who haven't seen it, please watch season one. It's worth your time. And season
It's
two,
great.
I
Yeah.
think,
I mean, you can
hits it
watch
out of the
season 2
park.
on itself. You won't
Yeah.
miss it. There's not too many connecting
Hmm.
threads. It's an independent case,
Yeah.
but you can watch. There's one character that recurs, but you don't have to know season 1 to know this character. So, but just watch it because it's actually well made and it's a good mystery.
Actually,
If you
there are more than
enjoy,
one character. There's more than one character that recurs, and
sure.
they pop up every now
If
and
you,
then.
yeah. So
The slight commonality to Department Q and Kerala Crime Files is that this also is not your typical whodunit kind of show. It
no.
is a show that creeps under your skin, asks very tough questions, and occasionally makes you feel very, very sad about a dog, right?
Yeah.
Because dogs are the center point of or the centerpiece of the show for sure. And
Yeah.
I love the show. I love how tight it is. I love how
Yes.
it's written, how it's executed, because I think what Malayalam movies or shows do very well is police procedural dramas. I think the attention
Yes.
to detail,
Oh my
how they go
God.
about it, it is second to none. because
Agree.
because in the first season also, I think I saw a couple of things when the police are sort of investigating a murder, in terms of how the forensics go about their things, which I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware that this such a thing happens, and I had to look it up, and I said, oh, this is actually a thing that happens. So if you see season one, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, and let me say this upfront: if you're the kind of person who watches shows while doing something on the side, like laundry or scrolling on your phone, this is not the show for you. This
This is
is
not the
not
show.
that show.
You cannot look away from the screen for a second because there is constantly something happening. There's a clue that's being found. There's something that's been run down. There's a lead that's been chased. There's an interview that's happening. There's clues in every single moment of the show. So you have to pay attention. I mean, there is no going about it. But having said that, it's worth your time to pay attention because it's only
Hmm.
6 episodes. It's very tight, and it just literally it starts from from go, and this doesn't stop till the end. It doesn't take a breath. It doesn't really, it's not slow and doesn't really spend that much time with its characters and their lives and things. It just wants the mystery, and it wants to get into the nitty gritties of police work. So if that is your jam, and if you like those kind of like mysteries where you solve clues and then you get to the next point without worrying about the stresses and lives of these people who are solving the mystery, then this is the show for you. I mean, it's a good mystery show. You will enjoy it, and it also hits you where it needs to hit you. So it's a well done, well made show. People, I think, across the, I mean, this is not just in India, but I think even on like something like Netflix or some, they make the mistake of making shows too long. We were just
Yeah.
talking about this at the start of this discussion, that people just make these shows too long, and then it just meanders, and then you have no idea where things are going. Obviously, in the case of Department Q, it works because you want to hang out with the characters.
Hmm.
But if the characters were not that interesting, I think the show would have been too long for me. But in Kerala Crime Files, it's just it's not long. It's just a short, sweet, really great mystery show. So
Yeah.
that I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah. I would give props to the writer of the second season, Bahul Ramesh. So what he does brilliantly is that
Yeah,
he does not hold your hand, no voiceovers, no information dumps, but scattered puzzle pieces and these unspoken instructions.
yeah,
And it's but yeah, the I think the slight I think problem with the show or the slight catch would be, and especially for a non-Malayalam audience,
okay,
is that there is a because like you said, like you can't look away, because anytime you look away there would be something, some clue or something that makes you put the
yeah,
pieces together yourself. So, and at times, especially towards the end, there could be a point where it might seem as information overload, right? But but if you pay attention, and if you're not scrolling on your phone or doing something else, the reward is so worth it, because this is
yeah,
one of those rare crime shows that trusts your intelligence as a viewer, and even
yeah,
more impressively your empathy, because there is a question mark towards the end of it whether the
yeah,
crime committed is justified or not. And you
yeah,
don't just want to know who did it, you want to understand why. And
yeah,
that's brilliant. I think there are very few shows who sort of do it and do it well. And trust me, by the time we hit that emotional climax, I was not really like, I had questioned a lot of things, and in
yeah,
terms of different fabrics of the society, people, how we behave, how we are, and so on, the greed of people, the empathy or the lack of it, and it's just it's again, it's written, it's very tight. It's 6 episodes, 25 to 30 minutes each episode, and it's written really, really well.
yeah. I completely agree. I mean, it does make you, the point about whether it does make you question things at the end. It's totally right. I found myself doing that too. Although, like for me, there's nothing better than following one of these clue type shows or books. I love a good book that has various clues that people have to follow. So it translates into movies or shows as well for me. So I was fine for the most part, just following the mystery, but then the conclusion did make me think a bit. So it is absolutely worth the journey, and I think, like you said,
Hmm.
not a passive watch, but a good one nonetheless.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more specifically about the show and what works for it and what doesn't.
Yeah.
In terms of the characters and the
Hmm.
storyline itself. So we'll go into spoilers now.
Yeah.
And yeah, and guys, if you want to bow out right now, you can and watch the show and come back. We'll have a fun little discussion at the end of this. So see you.
One of the things I noticed was that season one was intimate and closed off in the area that it was happening. Like it was one main
Hmm.
premise around which
Yeah.
everything was happening. But this moves into, like, the heart and soul of Trivandrum and a few other places. So I'm
Yeah.
talking back alleys, broken tiles, CD flats, police stations where fans spin slowly over stale paperwork, and I think this is where Kerala Crime Files truly levels up, because
Yeah.
Trivandrum isn't just a backdrop; it's an active participant. So, and here is
Definitely.
where, a cinematographer like, I think, Jitin Stanislaus deserves a standing ovation, because even when the scene is just two people talking in a corridor, he's giving you depth, layers, and geography. So whether it's a rundown lodge, a grimy tea shop, an alleyway that turns into a crime scene, you're never lost. And you know where people are, you know how the spaces feel, and sometimes that feeling is more important than the dialogue itself. And it is refreshing to see a city shown the way it really is, not prettified in any way, just present and honest. So, and the interesting part is that once I'd seen the show, so I was reading what other people had said about the show, and one of the reviews, I think, mentioned there was this line that the camera never takes the attention away from the characters, even in busy public spaces. And that kind of
Yeah.
restraint is very rare and kind of poetic. And I
Yeah.
think I've always felt that Malayalam movies and TV shows kind of do it that bit better than anybody else, and
I was
this
just gonna
more
say
so.
that because I'm coming from outside of, like I don't know the language, so I've
Uh,
been watching a lot of like Malayalam cinema and Malayalam shows since, we've been together. So I think I have seen this personally. I feel like like Malayalam cinema does this lived in feeling really well. Like you are in their houses, you are in their tea shops, you are hanging out in a college with them, you are going on a tour of Guna caves with them. Like you
yeah,
are something about the way that Malayalam characters are, they just, and the way that the camera follows them is very very real, and it doesn't feel like you're watching a film, you're just watching a videotape of their lives and things are going around. And so it's kind of the same language. So I feel like that's a language of cinema there. it's
yeah,
just it's just very lived in, and it's the same language followed in this. It's lived in the like you said, in the police stations, in wherever, in like under bridges where they're finding their car and like the car is like dented or whatever.
yeah,
But you go, you are with them when you're doing all
mm,
this.
yeah,
And it's very real, it's very
yeah,
transportive in that sense. So
yeah,
I've always felt this about Malayalam cinema. However, if there are fantasy elements or whatever other elements that you want to put into a story, you will still have that. Like for instance, if you go to a romancham, which has like a horror element to it, you're still in that house with
yeah,
all those men, like with their chappals outside, and like all their clothes strewn around and their disgusting kitchen or whatever it is. You're still in that house, whether it is this chudel who's chasing you or whoever. So I think that is done super well, and that's done as well here overall. But I think, speaking of characters, I feel like here the characters kind of, they work. Obviously, they work in the sense that they are good at their job. They are to the point. But I don't know if I would. I think the mystery is bigger than the characters. Do you agree
yeah.
with that?
Yeah, I think, for anyone who's seen season one, so Aju Varghese and Lal kind of are the central characters in the first season,
Yeah.
and they come back. Largely, I think, it's the other characters who do a very solid job, by the way, whether it is Arjun Radhakrishnan or, I mean, the two legends of characters of Malayalam cinema, whether it is Harisri Ashokan or Indrans. I think they are incredible. And but the rest of the cast are people, again, they do a very solid and efficient job, and
Oh, absolutely. They're
it's
great at it.
a I don't want to sort of, do them a disservice by saying that it's a very interchangeable performance, like anybody could have done it. No, I think it's because of how real
Yeah.
it is. Like
Yeah.
it's like your cop next door. So your cop next door, I mean, it could be anybody, right? It could just be any
It's
person.
this volleyball playing,
Yeah, and
guy who has
I
allergies.
think, yeah, and you, so those are the kind of characters, and that's why this feels real. Like not just I mentioned the cinematography of it, and the how the city. I mean, how they've shown it, because Trivandrum is
Yeah.
not just an aesthetic in the show. It affects how the story plays out,
Yeah.
like technology in terms of CCTV footage, tower pings, or call detailed records. I mean, they all exist, and how they sort of weave in or integrate together, because they don't make it easy. These tools don't replicate human intuition. They complicate it even further, because you're
Yeah.
going off of a theory that, the moment with the severed finger, again, trying no spoilers or as few as possible, but the way they combined street smarts with tech, that was peak
Yeah.
storytelling of as to how they, went
Yeah.
after
They
a
chase
theory.
the.
They
Yeah.
and the thing is that sometimes when in cop shows they somebody does that, you are wondering, अरे ऐसे कैसे, ये ऐसे कैसे randomly. So again, the way, and they are very self-aware. I think the show was very self-aware. The characters, they'd been written in such a way that they were very self-aware, and they had seen it over the years, right?
Yeah.
And it was fascinating, because it was a great example of how Trivandrum's modern edge clashes with old school policing, because this city isn't built for clarity, it's built on layers, like the show itself. So a place where where who matters more than what you say, and that really wields, and that kind of person wields real power.
Yeah. Definitely. I think we shouldn't go deep into the mystery itself because it works. It's great. Watch it. The characters work as well. Obviously, where Department Q and this show differ are, the emphasis on character versus the emphasis on mystery. So that's they're different shows in that sense, but it's also, both of them are procedurals, and both of them are good solid watches. So it's a good start to what I hope is more good detective shows coming up. And I don't know if Kerala Crime File has been renewed for another
It
season,
should
but we
be.
would
It's
love to
not
see
yet,
it.
but I think, given what has been said about it, and how it has been received, I'm hoping that it will be
Yeah.
renewed for a season three. But to sort
Yeah.
of round it all up, if you had to give two reasons why Kerala Crime File works, what would they be?
It's crisp in its storytelling.
Hmm.
That is really works for it. I think it's a great binge. So just, over the weekend you can just sit and take 2 hours out of your life and watch it. It's great. And I think the mystery itself works. The nuances of police work, the lived in feeling of everywhere they go to Vandram, and wherever the mystery takes them to small little towns in Kerala, small little districts. I think all of that works really well. So it's an immersive show that is also very mindful of its runtime.
Hmm.
So that is my pitch basically for people to watch this show.
Yeah.
It's
For
worth it.
me, there are two things specifically. One, the makers trust the audience, which is very rare for shows or
Hmm.
movies to do. There's no spoon feeding, no
Yeah.
slow camera pans while someone monologues their entire backstory. Instead, we get fragments, reaction glimpses, and the stories are scattered like a piece of jigsaw, and you, the viewer, are expected to put it together. And I mean it in the best possible way ever, and it is a credit to how the show has been written. So it
Yeah.
feels like a show that respected me and said, hey, you're smart, keep up. And I loved that. And the other
Yeah.
thing about the story itself is that there are no caricatures here, no righteous cop versus evil villain. Instead, we meet
No.
people who are just trying to survive in a system that's indifferent, broken, or both. And even by the finale, you're left with questions not just about what happened, but why it happened. Who's really guilty? The show asks, and it refuses to give a straightforward answer, because it is for you to
Yeah.
maybe ponder over. And
Yeah.
that's so rare, right? I mean, shows usually rush to wrap everything up, and this one
Yeah.
lets you
And that is not to say
sit
that it
with it.
doesn't wrap things up. It does
Yeah.
wrap it up. You
Yeah,
know, in case
it
people get the thing that you won't get a conclusion by the end of it, you do.
yeah.
But
In
it
fact,
is a
what it
complicated conclusion.
yeah, because it lets you sit with that discomfort, and
Yeah,
somehow it makes it
absolutely.
more real. So that's a
Yeah,
great thing with Kerala Crime Files. And if I go back and ask the same question for Department Q, like what are the two things that because of which you will recommend this?
absolutely. The characters, they are brilliant.
Yeah.
Their chemistry is brilliant. I would say the same thing twice.
Yeah, I think
Because
I'll
I just think
agree.
that show is made by, what the characters mean to each other. By the end of it,
Yeah.
it leaves you with a smile on your face because of them. Just obviously there is a central mystery and all of that, blah blah blah, but the Scottish setting also works for it. But the main crux of the show is the characters and their relationship with each other. So that
Yeah.
is my point one and two.
Yeah, for me, again, your point one and two are my point one, so I agree. The characters, I mean, like I said, when by the end of the year they say that they make a list of the most memorable characters of 2025, Akram is bound to be
Yeah,
there. And the second reason being that there are very few shows that are made these days where you're like, season 2 kab aa raha hai, या next season kab aa raha hai. And that's what
yeah,
Department Q leaves you with, which again is a testament to how good the show or that particular season is. So
yeah,
yeah, I think for both the shows, super bingeable, must watch. You'll have a great time watching both shows. They're very similar and very different in their own way.
yeah, absolutely. So, like, if once you watch the shows, guys, comment and tell us what you thought, and like and subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back. Rajesh will be a frequent visitor because he lives with me. Yes, we will do something on K dramas. I have something fun planned for K dramas and all the various places where we intersect soon. So until then, bye.